Hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with my lovely fiancée Andrea, all the while fixing it up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. We'd love to have you. Well then, it's quite possible you may be confused. Not 1 week ago, I announced I lived on a much larger wooden motor cruiser, our flagship MV Geordie. We also own this little MV Poem. Both boats Ed Monk designed motor cruisers, and this one we live on during the winter here in downtown Victoria. What we'll do with this boat in the long term, we're not quite yet sure, and some of you have an opinion on that. But in the meantime, it's a very comfortable little pied de mer for living in Victoria while we work on the larger boat, MV Geordie, down at Fisherman's Wharf, which is just 15 minutes that way. Anyway, long story short, we're going to get into some pretty serious wooden boat work, but not this week, because we're still catching up on our summer cruising. So let's jump back in time and check out a little more of the beautiful islands of the Southern Gulf Islands of British Columbia.
We'll pick up where we left off at Pirates Cove on Coursey Island. And I wanted to show you another anchorage on the southern tip of the island that's open to the south on a beautiful beach. It does, however, require suitable weather. The entire southern end of the island is a provincial park, and that makes it just a lovely spot for walking around and exploring. We just love it.
I'm going to assume.
Oh, it's going to be quick.
Yeah.
Freeze. Your butt's
Leaving Pirates Cove, we'll go around the bottom of Coursey and up through Dodd Narrows. Now this is a choke point if you're not going to be out in the strait, as it's the only navigable way through the islands at this point. And as it is narrow, it has tremendous currents when the tide is really flowing. So you want to be at or at least near slack water. We often run it at 2 or 3 knots in our favor, and it seems to be just fine. In this case, we're about 1.5 knots or 2 knots in our favor. From there, we'll carry on northwest towards Nanaimo. And instead of staying in Nanaimo proper, we're going to stay at public wharfs on Cowichan Island, which is a really great spot. The entire island is a park, and tons and tons of walking and exploring to be done there. There's also a neat little pub nearby. There are several quarries on the island. This one produced round grindstones for the pulp and paper industry. Pretty neat. I mentioned the pub. It's an easy row over to nearby Protection Island to the Dinghy Dock Pub, which I think bills itself as the only floating pub in Canada. I'd have to check that, but it was good fun. From there, we took advantage of the dinghy dock's own ferry service downtown to Nanaimo Harbor, which meant we could run around downtown Nanaimo for a bit. And one of my favorite spots, which of course is going to be a hit with Andrea, who loves Mexican food, is Gina's Mexican Cafe.
Cheers.
Leaving Nanaimo, we went back through Dod Narrows and out into the strait to Silva Bay on the eastern tip of Gabriola Island. Now, Silva Bay has a long history with boating. In fact, there used to be a shipyard there, and there are lots of boats in the harbor on mooring balls. It's difficult to find an anchoring spot. Fortunately, some of our friends there were able to set us up with a mooring ball. It's always fun to catch up with our YouTube friends in Silva Bay. Firstly, Barry and Haley of Sailing Channel, Sailor Barry, and as well as my good friend Simon Stiles of Finding Simon, who has just moved up to this lovely big catch he's working on and plans to sail around the world. Now, I asked Simon to sit down with me for a little bit. I wanted to ask him a little bit what it was like for an East Coast guy to come out to this tiny little island and endorse a life of living aboard and restoring a boat. And I will share the full interview with him in the upcoming Island series when I get to that.
Only fins.
Okay.
Only fins.
Only fins. Fins?
Only fins, yeah. So it's like sexy fish.
Well, I'm privileged to be sitting here with my good friend Simon Stiles of Finding Simon. And I really want to sit down and have a coffee of the afternoon with him and talk about his experience coming out to the coast. Those of you who haven't been paying a lot of attention to what he's up to, you're from Ottawa.
I'm from Ottawa, yeah, originally.
Okay, so did you take it? What happened?
I don't know. Where do you want to start that story?
I mean, okay. I know that you were a van lifer, right? So
Right.
you were into sort of minimal living. You knew you
Yeah,
wanted...
I knew I needed to get out from the pathway I was in.
Right.
I bought a boat sight unseen.
But was that a plan?
No, the plan was to put up my van for sale.
Yeah.
To use the money to buy a boat.
Yeah.
I put the van up for sale, got way more than asking, and just suddenly I had 10 grand in cash in my hands.
Right.
And nowhere to live.
Yeah.
And no plan. And no boat. Yeah.
And so what, like Craigslist? You just said boat.
Yeah.
And it popped up here.
No, nothing found. I didn't find anything.
No.
What I did find was a motorcycle with a sidecar inside.
Simon is quite a character. Be sure to check out my full interview with him when I do the upcoming Island series on Gabriola Island. Leaving Silva Bay was a very early morning departure because yet again I had to catch the current at a Narrows, and this time it's at Gabriola Pass. I'll show you. We were well past slack tide, and the current was rushing out against us as we came through. We were able to power through, but I wouldn't have wanted to wait too much longer. Just inside Gabriola Pass is Whiggs Cove on the northern end of Valdez Island. Now, I've never been here before, but I've been told about it, and there's a provincial park with an interesting old homestead on it. Let's go explore. Directly opposite Wake's Cove is Degnan Bay, back on Gabriola Island. And over here, there again are many boats on mooring balls and little opportunity for an anchorage. But it's such a pretty little bay, so we thought we'd take you for a little tour. From there, we steamed south all the way to North Bay on the northern end of Thetis Island. This is a large open bay that some have suggested are a good overnight spot if there isn't a north wind. And now there really isn't any public facilities here and little opportunity to go ashore, but it certainly would be well protected for anything but a north wind. From there, we carried on to Fulford Harbor, which is the ferry terminal for Thetis Island, but there's also a government wharf there and a dinghy dock, so you could run ashore and get to one of the little pubs that's nearby. But there's another way. And that is to run down around the bottom and up into Telegraph Harbor and have a stop in at the Thetis Island Marina and enjoy their quite lovely pub.
Cheers.
Feeling like a bit of a stroll, we walked back across to Fulford Harbor and had a walk out on to the government wharf I had just told you about. Having never been, we ran up to the top of Telegraph Harbor to have a look at Telegraph Harbor Marina, which apparently also has a pub. I wanted to also have another look at that little gap between Thetis and Penellicut Island that is so enticing but way too shallow. around the bottom of Penelakut and over the top of Salt Spring, we return to one of our favorite spots, Princess Cove on Wallace Island. There's something magical about this island, at least for us. It's just such a glorious spot.
Hang in there.
Someday, we just have to make up a driftwood signboard for MV Geordie to place in the signboard hut here on Wallace. What an unbelievable collection. Wallace Island also boasts Conover Cove, a lovely little spot with room for perhaps half a dozen boats at stern tide, but there's also a wharf for another half a dozen boats or so. We never really seem to stay in here because even off season, the dock is full. Very popular spot. As we're determined to visit every dock and moorage in the Southern Gulf Islands, we're having a look at Fernwood Dock on Salt Spring Island. There really isn't anything here, but there's an interesting history we'll share with you all when we do Salt Spring Island on our island series. Leaving Fernwood Dock, we go over the top of Salt Spring Island and down into Vesuvius Harbor, which is one of the 3 ferry terminals for Salt Spring Island, and an interesting spot because, yes, there's a pub.
Enter.
Leaving Vesuvius, we carry on down the side of Salt Spring Island into Burgoyne Bay. This is a large open bay that's a very popular anchorage. It should be noted, though, that there is a very long fetch to the northwest, so a brisk northwesterly makes it quite uncomfortable in here. Even further down the coast of Salt Spring Island is the absolute gem of Musgrave Landing. It's a tiny little harbor with a private wharf, but also a small public wharf, and the views here are spectacular, especially if you get a good sunset. There isn't much ashore here, but there's a tiny little park you can walk through, and I understand there's a waterfall not too far. Directly west from Musgrave Landing is the adorable little town of Cowichan Bay on Vancouver Island. Now, this is a town with a long boating history. There are a lot of marinas in here, but from what I understand, the only available transit wharf at this time is at the Fisherman's Wharf, where they are very friendly and look after you quite nicely. A short stop here is no charge. This is the Cowichan Bay Maritime Center, a wonderful little museum of sorts that's very involved in the community. They do outreach projects with kids, having them make little boats. It's just a super spot. And down at the other end of town, there's an old shipyard here that's now a gallery, but it has 2 marine railways. Cowichan Bay has such a maritime history. I just love it. Plus, some really great bakeries. Every fall, a group of sea lions congregate on the outer breakwater at the Fisherman's Wharf. They just like sitting in the sun. Carrying on down the coast of Vancouver Island, we stopped in at the very tidy Mill Bay Marina, which has a lovely restaurant right on the pier, but they also have a very friendly staff at the fuel dock, so it's a good stopover and a quick short walk up to the grocery store. Splendid, splendid. From there, we crossed over Saanich Inlet, down towards the town of Brentwood Bay, and onto the little cove at Butchart Gardens, which is a lovely way to see the Butchart Gardens because you can stay for free on one of their balls and enter the park through their own dock. Here you can see the layout of the park and their own little harbor, Butchart Cove. I was determined to explore right to the bottom of Saanich Inlet, which is a deep ravine between two mountains. And at the bottom, a lovely little marina, mostly boat sheds, not much there for transient motors. But it was fun to get to the bottom. However, we just turned around because we were pretty pressed for time to get back before we lost a light. Returning back up to just below the Butchart Gardens is the adorable little Todd Inlet. This is a narrow little gap, so well protected. It's like a lagoon in here. And it's interesting because it has the old industrial piers from when the Butchart Gardens was actually a quarry. Really, really a neat spot. And nearby is Brentwood Bay if you wanted to dinghy just around the corner to all the services that would provide. A long steam up and over the top of Saanich Peninsula takes us to the tiny Russell Island, which I've never been to, which surprises me because it's right at the mouth of Fulford Harbor, which I adore. And there's always a bunch of boats moored just inside the little nook at the top of the island. Not a lot of protection, but the island is a park and just a lovely spot, so I see why people really enjoy it. And from there, we tuck into Fulford Harbor, which has sort of become our home away from home. This is the ferry terminal from Victoria to Salt Spring, and there's also a bus that serves across the island to the town of Ganges, but the little village also has a grocery store, a lovely restaurant, and a couple of other little stores. So everything you could possibly need. I think it's the most unappreciated moorage in the Southern Gulf Islands. And that, my friends, was the word of the week for 2 weeks ago. Yes, islands. You probably saw that coming. And I would like to award the Word of the Week t-shirt to Dusty Miller for 2 weeks ago when I forgot to even have a Word of the Week. So I picked at random from all the comments. Congratulations, Dusty. Get a hold of me and we'll make sure you get your shirt.
No, wait. Last chance of the season. I wrote. Thank you. I wrote all of those when I was 13 years old. I peaked too soon.
And then we begin our final leg home, but not before first stopping at Sydney Spit, an incredibly popular sandy spit directly opposite the town of Sydney. Now, when we were there, it was high tide, so much of the spit was underwater, and it was off season, so there weren't that many boats there. But in the heat of summer, this place is packed, and it's a reasonably good moorage. It's a park, so that there are mooring balls and a dinghy dock, a lovely place to spend an afternoon. And finally, down around the bottom of Victoria and into Victoria Harbor. Our first stop is actually Fisherman's Wharf, where I keep a slip year-round for Geordie during the winter and Poem during the summer. So today is a transition day. We've been cruising on Geordie all summer, and now we're going to raft them up for a bit to transfer all the stuff back and forth between the two boats and then take Poem downtown for the winter. I just love these shots because it just shows what a great able seaman Andrea has become. She was so helpful in managing the lines of transferring the boats. Returning to our winter moorage in downtown Victoria is always so emotional. After 4 wonderful months out cruising, it's just incredible to be able to return to this precious spot for the 8 months of winter. We're very, very fortunate. Oh, what's neat about this satellite photo is, yes, that's Poem during the Wooden Boat Festival. How neat. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing on the top right of your screen. And if you've really enjoyed it, please consider becoming a supporter, either through Patreon on the link on the bottom right or other options down in the description. If you enjoy cruising videos, why don't you watch our video on Cruising Desolation Sound in the top left? And if you want to watch all the episodes from the beginning, you super fan, that's in the bottom left. See you next week.